Um, so one of the great jobs of being the dean of the Cockrell School of Engineering is I see the breadth of all the energy research activity that's done at the University of Texas. And so for sure, there's incredible research going on, technical research in order to deliver energy to the planet. We, of course, have the #1 petroleum and geosystems engineering department in the world. We also have great researchers who do work on electricity grid, in battery materials and other energy materials, and carbon capture and geothermal, just to give you some examples. But as we all know, energy, to really deliver it, requires an integration of systems, and there's an important business and policy aspect of that. And this is another place where UT excels. From activities in the McCombs School of Business, the KBH Center at UT, the LBJ School, working out those details of policy and technology to deliver energy at scale is something that UT is uniquely qualified and excelling at. So I'll just give you one example of that, and that is a program run by Arvind Ravi Kumar and Dave Allen at UT Austin. And what they really are working on is methane monitoring and mitigation. So for those of you who don't know, there's fugitive methane that's released when you produce oil and gas, for example, and from some other places. And methane is a greenhouse gas. It is short-lived compared to CO2, but we're constantly producing it. It turns out that that methane that we release is equivalent to the CO2 that would be released from about 2 billion gas-powered vehicles. So there's only about 1.6 billion gas-powered vehicles in the world right now. So if we can take that out, right, capture that fugitive methane and actually sell it, which is now like a double win, we reduce the greenhouse gas effect, and we basically also increasing a product. And Dave Allen and Arvind Ravi Kumar's work integrates this idea of technology. How do you use satellites, drones, ground sensors to get a clear picture of where the methane is coming from? What are the technologies you use to mitigate it? And they work closely with industry. They have many corporate supporters to make this an effective partnership and to impact what's going around in the world. And so that's just one example of the kind of scale and breadth of work that's being done at the University of Texas at Austin. So with that, I'd like to introduce the speakers for the first panel. We're really fortunate to have Ryan Lance, the CEO of ConocoPhillips, here today. And he'll be talking with Interim President Jim Davis about all things energy and perhaps beyond. So please welcome Ryan and Jim.
Well, thank you all for being here, and thanks for all the team and the staff to bring this event together. This is an important time at the university, and grateful to have this gathering to think about energy, and I'm really grateful that you're here today.
Thank you, Jim.
To lead us to a conversation, Mr. Lance, about kind of what the future holds, what you would see in the world of energy for us as human beings in this globe, but also as students and teachers. So thanks for being here.
Appreciate the invitation. Thank you for all showing up so early in the morning for the first panel. So
Yeah, thanks for being here, y'all.
the bacon looked pretty good.
Yeah. Tip your waiters. So you've been in this energy industry for 40 years. And a lot of us are here in the academic world curious then to say, well, what is your educational background? What led you into this career?
Yeah, well, I'm a cement head, so I'm an engineer. Kind of an interest back. My dad was a careerman in the military. He was an Air Force pilot. So we traveled all over the U.S., but I grew up in Montana. So our family had a farm in northeastern Montana. So every summer, kids would get shipped back to the family farm. So raised by my grandmother and grandfather as much as my mom and my dad. But he was able to get his last tour of duty back to a place called Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. And I say that because he put 3 kids through college at the same time on a military salary, which wasn't wasn't great, which meant that I had to kind of put myself through school. And one of the opportunities you had in northern Wyoming area was a place called the Powder River Basin was active. So I started roughnecking on rigs at an early age in high school, and come to love the people, what we were doing. And so I went to a small school in Montana. Some refer to it as the School of Mines, which I think it is, not a School of Mines. It's the School of Mines, not to be confused with that place in Colorado. But so I went to the Montana School of Mines in Butte, Montana, became a petroleum engineer. But I worked through school, and what I did is I found my passion early on for liking the business, like the people that I was around, like the technology that was being deployed, like the opportunities set globally, the businesses all around the world. So that's what attracted me to petroleum engineering, and then started my career, and 40 years later, get the honor and the privilege to run ConocoPhillips, which I've been the CEO of for the last now 13 years.
That's fantastic.
That's the Reader's Digest abridged version of how I got to where I am.
That's a great story, though. That's that kind of real grit, working in the patch, working in the fields, and then having that translate into then education on top of that gives you theory, structure, comprehension of the engineering details, but then to apply that to overall career, it's fantastic.
Yeah. And that's why I think the internships that our company offers, the opportunities that the kids get coming out of school now is take advantage of all of those. Figure out what your passion is, figure out what you like or not. We have a responsibility to offer those internships. It's important because we get to look at kids that have the passion and want to be in the business, and it gives students the opportunity to learn what pieces and parts of the business they may like or don't like, or maybe they don't like the industry and I want to move on to some other direction. And that's a real opportunity. I took advantage of it, and I encourage everybody to do the same thing.
Very good advice. Thanks for that. Here at the university, when we think about energy broadly, we take a all the above approach, all forms, all types, how to meet this global demand over time. How would you describe the different roles of fossil fuels, alternative energy right now? How do you see those roles changing over time?
Yeah. That's great to hear, Jim, because I think the answer is obviously all the above. You look at the world's growth. There's 1.5 billion people today that have what you and I have, which are lights come on, air conditioning comes on in the summer, heat comes on in the winter. There's 6 billion people that are growing to 8 billion people that don't have what you and I have. And so getting energy security and energy affordability and reliability is so important, and it doesn't matter where it comes from. If the sun shines a lot and you can put solar in and combine it with batteries, or the wind blows, you ought to be doing that. We're going to need baseload power because the capacity factor generally for renewable forms of energy at best is about 30 to 35%. So that means 2/3 of the time it's not working, or it's not running. It's either nighttime or the wind isn't blowing. So you have to have some form of backup power generation. You have to have a base load of power. It's got to either come from one of the spots that you get it, natural gas, oil, coal, batteries. So it really is truly an all the above equation. The U.S., the demand for electricity, if you just focus in on the electricity side of the business, we've been flat for about 15 years. So our demand has not grown. So what it's allowed us to do is to take coal out of the system, put in natural gas, reduce our emissions, and get to a more affordable and reliable form of baseload power that has also allowed us, like in Texas here, to put 25 to 30% of our grid now on renewables. So it is a great balance of the system, but it is a realization that you need all these forms of energy in order to keep affordable, reliable energy. There's a couple of acronyms that kind of resonate with me a little bit, and I heard it from the gentleman who runs ERCOT today, is CARE, C-A-R-E, which is clean, affordable, reliable energy. The first time you have an upset in the system, it becomes RACE, reliable, affordable, clean energy. And I think that's the balance that we have to strike, and that's why all the above is exactly the right way to think about it. One other interesting stat, how many people, when do you think coal peaked in the world? Any idea? It peaked last year, and it'll peak again this year. and it'll peak probably another year from now. How about wood, biomass? It peaked last year. It will peak again this year. So that just tells you what the energy requirements are around the world today, and why this all-the-above approach is just so important, because affordability and reliability are at the center point. If you can become an affordable and reliable energy, your country, your people, the area has the chance of gaining some wealth. And then obviously what comes next is you want clean water, clean air, clean environment, and all that. And that's what's so fascinating in our business, is we play at the juxtaposition of all that: energy security, energy reliability, and sustainability. Like the Dean talked about, how do we reduce fugitive methane emissions in our business, which is a key thing that we have to do in our industry.
So if we're now, I'm hearing you really describe this as a global issue. We're now about a quarter through 2025. From your perspective, what are you seeing as the issues that occupy most of your time, maybe thinking from a global perspective, but also a Texas perspective?
Well, I'm probably like y'all wondering what happens at 4 o'clock today when the president announced tariffs. So we're running an inordinate number of scenario plans right now, trying to understand what happens. So I'm spending a lot of time with what the current administration is trying to do with their policy structure, and globally it is, our business is, you'd call it a growth business. We're growing modestly. We're not sort of, tech that's growing 10 or 15%, annually. Our market macro is growing about 1%, but it's a growth market, and I'm pretty constructive over the next 10 to 15 years, because just what we talked about, the energy demand and getting affordable, reliable energy, is everybody's goal around the world. So I think this business, our business, fossil fuels, is going to be around a long time, but we have to make it sustainable. So we spend a lot of time thinking about that and thinking about the implications of that. We have 3 issues in our business: methane, flaring, and what we call orphaned wells. Because wells that were drilled 100 years ago haven't been properly abandoned. We need to go abandon them. The issue is that it's all eminently engineerable. So there's fixes to that. And it's generally not a U.S. problem. It's an Iranian problem. It's a Nigeria problem. It's a Venezuelan problem. It's you go to places around the world that are flaring a lot of gas and creating that. But we can't afford to go through this grand experiment on our planet. So we spend a lot of time, thinking about the sustainability of the business. Certainly our company does, and all of our competitors are doing the same thing. Specific to Texas, we have a power problem. The peak load in Texas on any given day, usually in the summer when it's hot and it's humid, so the air conditioning's on. Our peak load in Texas today is the equivalent of California plus New York combined. And by 2030, we have to add the equivalent of a California system in Texas by 2030. So when you think about the issues, and look, I'm trying to electrify all of our equipment because it's better than burning gas, so you can avoid fugitive emissions. So we're all trying to electrify. The vehicle system is electrifying in the U.S. The power plants, or the hyperscalers and the AI and all that's coming. So it is a power thing that's coming for us, not only across the U.S., but also globally, as we start to electrify more, and AI and some of the technology starts to gather hold in terms of what we're doing. So and probably one of the more Texas-related thing for us is water. We produce probably about 3 to 4 barrels of water for every barrel of oil that we produce here in Texas. So we're actually kind of in the water business. So re-injecting, recycling, reusing, and the technologies associated with being more sustainable in the water space, that's particularly an issue in Texas. You've heard about injection in Oklahoma and Texas. Sometimes we dispose of our water deep into the ground, and sometimes creates seismic activity. So we have to be really careful, but also another very engineerable and manageable kind of thing. But those are maybe a couple of the more closer to home issues that I spend a lot of time thinking about.
Well, you touched on AI a moment ago, and I heard that as a comment around power demand. Is AI also having an effect in the industry in terms of how you operate the company?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I spend I'm now spending about 2 days a year in Silicon Valley just looking at all the innovation that's going on in the AI space. I've been doing this for about 6 years, and it's remarkable to watch the progression. Now you're seeing some of this agentic AI and some of this machine learning become more industry specific, and you can see it in the verticals. You can see it in oil and gas. You can see it in medicine. You can see it in healthcare. You can see it in manufacturing. And it's becoming more attuned to what I'd call enterprise-wide unstructured data. So we have all this data inside our company. It's kind of generally unstructured. I have depth delineated data, time delineated data, financial data, and how you put all that together. AI was working, 3, 4, 5 years ago, what I'd call in the retail space. You drive a red car, therefore you like bananas. So it did this association work, with all these models, and now we're trying to get it fitted into unstructured data. And I personally think this AI revolution, there's going to be a lot of winners and losers, but it's going to be bigger than the internet and mobile devices combined. And so we have to grapple with this. I think universities have to be thinking about it. How do you get the kids coming up now trained? How do you get them, educated in sort of the AI? Not everybody has to be a coder, but understanding the use cases, understanding the opportunity that it prevents. And on the company side, yeah, there's a big efficiency component, and they say, well, does that mean you're going to get rid of half your people? No, I think it's going to make half our people how to work a whole lot smarter in terms of what they're doing. So we see a lot of use cases sitting inside our company. The dean talked about methane. There's some really interesting use cases with autonomous drones and flying with sensored equipment that can take off, fly a pre-described route, come back, dock itself and recharge, send an email off to your head of your production division saying, I saw a leak over there, and there, give it the coordinates, dispatch a person out there quickly with a FLIR camera to identify it, confirm it, tighten up a bolt, put a tank top latch back in place. So those kinds of things are helping. And that's just one small use case of this agentic AI. Now we're trying to figure out what these deep machine learning models can do in our business. And look, our industry was the first in the data analytics space, I think, 30, 40 years ago. We were trying to figure out how fluid flows through porous media 20,000 feet under the ground. And so we have a lot of physical models, to try to predict and forecast and understand that. So a lot of machine learning capability. So it's a natural extension of this. Hopefully it can work in our business. But I think it's going to be, you've got your challenges on the university side, which would be great to hear a little bit about that, with ChatGPT and OpenAI and all those kinds of things. But it's coming, and it's going to be big.
Yeah, the AI influence at the university has really been focused around how do we really harness this tool? How do we have our students learn how to incorporate that? It's across all sectors, as best I can hear and tell. I've met several hundred students in this first 6 weeks, and it is amazing to me to see their drive. The students want to have an impact in their lives. They come to the university to learn something, but to do something with that learning to change the world, to transform lives, the core missions of our university. Help me explain to them, why should they seek a career in the energy field?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I get this a lot. You're a dying industry. You're a tired industry. It's going away. The energy transition, and I remind people, transitions are additive. Transitions aren't substitutive. So you don't take a hunk of the energy system out and plug in another one. And all transitions are that way. Some are faster. Some are a little bit slower. Mobile phones. How many have a landline still today? Anybody in the room have a landline? Okay, so you've transitioned well, right? You've transitioned all the way to, how many have an EV? Car, automobile. There's only about 4 of you that have transitioned to electric vehicles. So again, it's not substitutive, it's additive. So our business is going to be around a long time, notwithstanding the issues associated with the transition and the issues associated with all the above kind of energy, which are going to be needed, but you need the base load power. You need 6 to 8 billion people wanting that energy security and affordability and reliability themselves. So the business is going to be around a long time. and people think we're not a high-tech business. People have the vision. They have the drilling rig throwing a chain and pulling pipe out of the ground. And, and that's so far from what we do as a company now. And you think about the technology we're deploying. We talked a little bit about the drones and and AI, and we're getting into agentic AI, but the machine learning models that we use to predict fluid flow through porous media, to think about how we optimize lifting of the oil and the gas from the bottom of the well all the way to the top of the well, optimize our logistics system, our supply chain, how we think about the global nature of our business. We're moving stuff here into a refinery to a gas station to a car. How do we make that whole system more efficient? So, we're I believe some of the cutting edge technology in this world, and we're pretty fast followers. We may not invent it really quickly, but we fast follow very quickly. And so, I would tell, if you want a global perspective, you want the opportunity to move around globally, you can do that in our company. And you can be sort of what I describe as maybe a foot deep and a mile wide. You can also be a foot deep and hugely wide. I mean, you can be a technical expert, an SME, a subject matter expert in our company, and you can have an incredible 30, 40-year career, or you can be a lot wider and you can go to places like Libya, go to places like Equatorial Guinea, if you'd like to, Nigeria, if you'd like to do that, Alaska, Canada. Work here because half our business is in the U.S. today, in the unconventional space that has pioneered a global energy revolution over the last 15 years just here in the U.S., taking us from about 5 million barrels a day to over 13 million barrels a day as a country, and now the leading energy producer in the world today. So that's what's exciting about the business, and that's why I tell young kids today, give us a look. Come and try us for an internship. Try us for a summer and see what you can find, and then, because we give you good mentors, we hook you up with good people, and then you can see the global nature of the business and the technology that we're deploying in this business. It's not the old field that I grew up in 40 years ago, for sure.
So then when you're looking to hire from students that are graduating from a university, I can imagine there are technical skills you're looking for. There are probably fields you care about. Are there other less obvious skill sets that you look for when your company values when you're trying to find a new hire?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jim. And the answer is yes. Certainly, grades matter at the end of the day. But the grit that you talked about,
right,
in the background, hardworking. I think we're looking at curious people that ask questions, that not only want to know what we're doing, but why are you doing it that way? So I think we look for those kinds of traits and skills when we do. And obviously, the engineering, we hire engineering, finance, geology, safety, IT. So, just people that want to work in what I'd call a multidisciplinary fashion, because this business is such that the collective brain is so much smarter than any one individual brain. So, it's wanting to work in that team environment, wanting to collaborate, wanting to roll your sleeves up. So we look for kids that kind of have that aptitude, But again, we're also okay with, subject matter experts that say, just put me in my room and I'm going to do this, and you can have a valuable career. But I'd say, those are maybe 10% of our organization, not the 90% of our organization. But the good thing is we can accommodate both of those. So those are just some of the traits we look for in an engineer. And I think the AI piece of it is important. So some understanding of that, or recognition of it, and embracing of it. And, change in our business is constant. So I tell people, if you look for the opportunity out of change, you'll always find it. Always find it. If you look for the crap that comes from change, you'll always find that as well. So, but our business is constantly changing, and is remake ourselves. So you want people that come in with that, embrace that kind of a sense of what they want to do, that I can't tell you what it'll be 5 years from now, and you can't predict it, but you can control it, and if you look for the opportunities, you'll always find it.
Well, we're here at a place where we believe what starts here changes the world.
Yeah, you're a perfect platform for that.
When we're trying to help mentor and train students coming through the process to find a meaningful career, is there something you'd recommend to universities to help develop that talent so you have that curiosity combined with technical skill that could be a good leader, a good employee, a good friend, the things you need in a company?
Yeah, certainly. Your graduates are 4% of my workforce today. So we're a big, my son's a Longhorn. My daughter is an Aggie, sorry. But so we're a family divided. But yeah, I think, what we talked about earlier, Jim, in terms of the internships and giving the students an opportunity to get out there and spend a summer with company. It doesn't matter what industry, what company. Figure out your passion, figure out what you really like to go do, and then we have a responsibility to try to make it. So, for getting the kids to really go and do something different, take an internship, whatever industry or passion you're trying to pursue, those things are important. Stretch yourself, take some of the computer classes that you may need to take regardless of your curriculum just to get comfortable. And y'all in the room are probably so much better at it than I am. I've had to force myself to embrace ChatGPT and some of these other things. I use Microsoft Copilot. We're a Microsoft company now. And I'm not sure the last time that I actually drafted my own email. So I now just tell I want to go to this person. I kind of want to talk about this. Draft it up for me. And it learns too, so it learns how I speak, how I talk, how I write, and it's truly amazing. And it's just an efficiency thing, to help. So getting the kids comfortable with that kind of a platform and those kinds of changes that are coming in the world. And fortunately, you all are much better at it than I am because you've grown up with, the visual world, the TikTok world, the social media world, something that I didn't grow up in. And maybe I'll extend that to you, but I don't know. But I think all those things are so important. Just instead of being the best engineer, geologist, financial person, IT, you sort of get that broader scope is really important.
Yeah, I had a really great meeting this week with our newly elected student body president and vice president, and I was reminding them that when I was younger than them, we had to learn what a computer is. And that, I had a basic programming class at middle school at O. Henry here in Austin, Texas. And this is back in the early 80s. And, those are things that they're adapting to instantly. They have grown out of a world of technology and change. But they had the same insight you just described. The student body president and the vice president are telling us, how can we help our students get out of the classroom and do other things as well, to get life experience and to get a fuller set of skills and traits that make them quality, full, creative thinkers. And of course, they also, each of them are triple majors at the same time.
There you go.
So the student body here, the students I've met here are just incredibly talented and gifted and eager to make a big change in the world. And to have a long, fulfilling career. And I'm grateful that your company is part of that journey for our students.
This is an important institution, not only for our company, but for Texas and for our country. At the end of the day, you're educating the future leaders, so critical.
We wanted to at least save some time for the questions you may have. Do we have some questions from the audience you'd like to discuss? We have some microphones over here, it looks like.
Great. Well, so we're going to collect the note cards for questions. So we've got Laura going around. So if you have a question on a note card, just kind of raise your hand. While they're collecting those, I'll kick it off with a question. So
I'm not sure this should be allowed, but
yeah.
Okay, give it a go.
I'm the director of the Energy Institute.
All right.
I actually have like 7 questions, but I think, so we're working on something called the Permian Energy Development Lab, thinking about the Permian Basin a lot. I think the Permian Basin is a amazing resource for the state of Texas, also New Mexico, largest oil and gas producing region in the world, largest basin. ConocoPhillips is a big operator out there. How do you see what's happening in the Permian Basin now? How do you see the future of the Permian Basin?
Yeah, no, you're right, Brian. This is it's a tremendous geologic gift to Texas and the United States. So it's a basin that's thick and deep and has a lot of hydrocarbons stored in place. And when we figured out the confluence of the technologies to make virtually nano-Darcy rock produce hydrocarbons, so something as hard as this arm on the chair or your tabletop, how do you fracture the rock? How do you stimulate the rock in order to produce the hydrocarbons out of it? And I would say when we cracked the code initially on that, it's a basin now again that has really been responsible for the huge amount of growth in the U.S. energy system, and it's not done. The next challenge for us in the Permian is if you calculate the amount of hydrocarbons sitting in this rock, and this could be a 1,200-foot thick column made up of 7 or 8 different benches or intervals in this thick column, you calculate all what you theoretically think all the oil and the gas in place is in this 1,200, we're probably only getting somewhere around 15, maybe 20% of the recovery of that. So the next phase, when you have all this, is how do you create the technology to take those recovery factors in this very tight rock up to something higher that would maybe more like conventional reservoirs where we're getting 30, 40, 50, 60% of that oil out. And I tell everybody I'd never bet against this industry on the technology because we'll figure it out. And it may take a little bit higher price in order to incentivize the economics to go do it. But once we get that price signal and we start doing it, generally, we get pretty efficient. And what happens then is the price comes back down because we figure out how to lower the cost of supply out of all of that volume that we're getting out of the rock. So I would tell you that's why if you're in the Permian Basin today, our company is, I think, the second largest producer today, that it's going to be around a long time because we're going to have to innovate and we're going to have to apply different technologies to keep it reliable, affordable, and more sustainable as we go forward. So I think it's going to be the gift that keeps giving to Texas and our country for a long time.
Yeah, no, that's great. Got a question on geological CO2 storage. So I think it's an interesting question. I guess, what is ConocoPhillips doing in that space? Is it important? Can it be scaled to make a difference? I'm also curious about your whether you have an idea of like a business model for carbon capture and storage.
Yeah, it's a great question. We spent a lot of time looking at it. I think I'd say the reality for scaling CO2 injection today is probably a few years off yet. The technology's there, we can do it. We know how to put CO2 into the ground. So let me explain the why. The market and the regulations haven't caught up to incentivize the business. So look, if you've got an LNG export facility on the Texas Gulf Coast, which we do at Port Arthur, we've studied putting an amine piece of equipment at the front end of that captures CO2, pure CO2, that we can then inject into the ground. We have acreage. We know how to inject it into the ground. It adds about 50 to 70 cents a million BTU to the price of the gas. So today we're selling gas kind of average across the U.S. about $4 a million BTU. That would make the gas have to sell for $4.50 or $4.70. You go to the market and you say, look, we've got more sustainable gas because we've injected the CO2 in the ground, and they won't pay you 50 to 70 cents for that CO2. So the broad application of that, the market hasn't caught up. So the equivalent abated cost per ton of that CO2 injection is somewhere around $200 a ton. So most carbon taxes that are available around the world, the Europeans, the Australians, you talk about carbon, or Canada, north of the border, talk about a carbon tax that's on the order of $20 to $50 a ton. The cost of doing CO2 injection, by and large, by itself, is 100 to 200 a ton. So you can see the disconnect. And so it will start, and we're studying it, we're doing it in some places around the world, but it's gonna have to bootstrap its way up, and the market's gonna have to either get there by innovating and making the cost lower, so there's not a premium to do it in the business, or the market's gonna have to be willing to pay the premium. Why do they do that? Because of regulation that comes out, both globally and maybe here in the United States down the road that forces more of it. I think there'll be industrial hubs where a lot of CO2 is produced. You might find that happening quicker because they can spread the cost over a large industrial hub, and they can get the cost down to something that would make sense. So it is starting, it's going on today. We have the technology, we know how to do it. It basically becomes an economic driver for companies like ours to do more of that. So we're attacking what we call the emissions on the front end. It's what the Dean talked about earlier. How do we reduce fugitive emissions? How do we make sure we don't flare? And how do we take care of our operations that way to reduce the amount of CO2 and methane that we're producing to begin with?
Yeah, that's great. I have a question, I guess, kind of follow-up. At this time of changing regulations, which regulations do you believe need to be altered or removed? I don't know if there's anything top of mind there.
Well, there's a subtlety. So the EPA put out methane rules in the last administration this is probably for the nerds in the room here a little bit. So apologize for that up front. So the industry's, we haven't been opposed to regulations. Look, raising the floor on the industry and making us meet tougher methane, fugitive CO2 emissions is the right thing to be doing. They took an additional step, one step further, which I hope the Dean is right in his analogy there, and the group that's studying fugitive methane emissions. They want to fine the industry now for the methane that is being emitted, and the problem is he's right. There's satellites, there's local sensing, there's FLIR cameras that we can run with our operators, but no one has figured out how to quantify a leak. We've even gone as far as to force a leak out of a piece of equipment, use all the sensors we can. We have a known quantity that we've leaked in the lab, and we've tried to measure it, and we haven't figured out how to do it. Well, if you're going to fine somebody for the methane leak, that infers that you know when it started, the volume that's leaked, to put a fine against it. And there's no technology today that tells us how to quantify a leak, how to integrate under a time curve, right, to get a volume that is leaked. So the prior administration went one step further and said, look, we're going to fine you for methane leaks, and we don't even know how to comply. So I mean, that's an example where a regulation just went one step too far, and the industry gets labeled as fighting all the regulation. We're not. We're fine with all the underlying methane regulation, but they went one step too far that puts us in a place where we can't even comply to the regulations. So it's one that that's just an example of one that we're going back with this administration and saying, look, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. The underlying stuff is just fine, but can we just eliminate this last step that they took that really is not a practical step to be taking?
Yeah. So there's another question, kind of following up on that line of thought. Also, while AI is used to accelerate business processes or personalization. Where do you see the intersection of IoT, so Internet of Things, and leverage AI for detailed, constant monitoring for risk mitigation at sites or rigs? So I guess
that's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
That's a student question.
Yeah. Well, look, we spend a lot of time separating our IT and our OT. So from a cyber and a security perspective, we can't have the OT and the IT talking to each other. So we can't let somebody go into our SCADA system or our field operated systems and be able to work their way all the way back to our employee rows, our payroll, and all of our central sort of financials. So we spend a lot of time. So we don't try to take the Internet of Things or the IoT pieces in the operations side and pull it into the center, because we need to build that firewall to do that. But notwithstanding that, in the operating side of the business, absolutely, we're, you know, the nirvana for us is if we could ever go to a completely wireless system in our operations, because we pull a lot of wire, and we have a lot of sensors, we have a lot of data, and all do that. Can we actually go to a wireless system in terms of the construction stuff that we're building? And there's some people that are building models say we technically could get there today, but look, you got to run 24/7. You can't get an interruption in the system. So having the wired capacity, but absolutely, we're getting all of our pieces of equipment to talk to each other, to handheld computers that our operators are running around the field with. And if you can imagine AI helping that out, is an operator saying, you know, in the morning he's going to go fix broke wells, right? You say, well, there's a 50 barrel a day well over here and a 10 barrel a day well. He naturally goes to the 50 barrel a day well. Well, it could be a case where the 10 barrel a day makes more money on a daily basis. And so if we can integrate all that information, and that's what we're doing today, to make our operators smarter about how they run their field duties, how they go out, how they check on wells. And it may be that a 2 barrel a day well we don't fix on a weekend, on overtime, at night. We just come back with our daily crews and fix it. So yeah, there's a lot of, that's what's exciting about this AI deep machine learning models. If they can combine all this data, look for the trends, it can help, you know, well, I'm not going to get rid of an operator, but I can make an operator a whole lot smarter about where he goes, and it just makes the company a whole lot more efficient.
That's super fascinating. So how about a question about research and development? So we've got the interim president of UT also up here. I'm curious, how does ConocoPhillips see the importance of industry partnerships in terms of R&D these days? You know, how does ConocoPhillips address research internally? How do you see the industry partnerships? And then I'd like to hear your response, but also maybe Jim's thoughts on that as university president.
Well, I think it's critical. I think we sponsor a lot in the think tanks and the universities. So I think we're involved here in your Energy Institute in trying to make sure, whether it's methane or some of the things that you're doing. We support consortiums. We support the X Prize. So we're a big sponsor of some of that. So the innovation is really important. We do a little bit inside the company as well, but we're very, very focused on the things that attack our resource. And it's really kind of three things. How do we lower the cost of supply? How do we make it more efficient? Or how do we improve safety and environmental performance? So we tend to really focus our efforts internally, but we try to leverage that out with the universities and the other consortiums, industry consortiums that are working together. The reality in our business is an R&D advantage in our business gets competed away very quickly. So you have to take that into mind as well, because what happens is the service companies get a hold of it. So they find out, well, I think you had the CEO of EOG, which is a great company, Ezra. You know, we find out, what are they doing? And, you know, the service company, Halliburton, Schlumberger, tell us, well, they're trying this. And so if it really works for somebody, it's going to get work. Somebody else is going to fix it up because we're a fence line neighbor. We're a partner and a competitor at the same time. We have ownership in what they're doing. We see what they're doing. So that's what happens in our business, unlike maybe pharma or some of the areas. The competitive advantage to some IP that you develop ends up getting transferred out into the business pretty quickly. So that's why consortiums, universities, and working in our business, in our industry, in the upstream side of the business, is usually the mode we like to go in, because we just recognize it's going to get competed away. So let's raise the ocean for everybody.
Interesting.
From my perspective, I agree with everything you've said. For us also at the university, how do we secure enduring funding to do the basic research, the applied research, the things that universities have a long history of building for use around the world for all kinds of ideas? Partnering with industry is one of those great sources, not just for the money, which we appreciate, but also for the ideas. What our researchers often want to know is, what can I do that's going to make a difference And so having a sense of what are the biggest problems that we could solve as researchers, and gain that from people who know what the biggest problems really are, gives us a target set of how we apply and organize our work to drive real change in the world and drive impact in the world through the hard science that we can perform here at the university.
And I think between the universities and the national laboratories, it's just absolutely critical that we keep doing that fundamental kind of research to keep moving us ahead. You know, the U.S. has kind of 4 advantages as a country. You know, we have energy security, we have food security, we've probably got the best military in the world, and 4th, we've got an AI technology R&D advantage. And we've got to maintain those 4, what I think are 4 critical competitive advantages for our country. And that last piece, I think, is what is so important for our higher education system in the United States.
I translate that into things like how do we become a world leader in material sciences so that we have fundamentals that can apply across biomedical, into oil and gas, into all the things that are those fundamental things that can really drive innovation, technology changes, how we deal with semiconductor transformation, the things that also matter for the long-term success of not just academia and science and knowledge, but also the real-world applied benefits we have from technology.
Awesome. I have to ask a question about natural hydrogen. I mean, everyone's super excited. Is there natural hydrogen? Is that a business opportunity? So what does ConocoPhillips think about the potential of finding natural hydrogen?
Yeah, so it's another, look, there's naturally occurring hydrogen around the world, and in some places here in the United States. It's interesting. Again, it comes back to sort of that economic model. We studied blue, green, gray, turquoise, you name the color, hydrogen. We had a plant a project we were developing in Corpus Christi on the Upper Texas Gulf Coast with a partner, one of the biggest utilities in Japan. And now this isn't natural, but it'll give you a sense of the scale and the story is, you know, we studied that, and probably the cheapest blue hydrogen, which is cracking the methane molecule, taking the CO2 and injecting it down into the ground and producing the hydrogen. So let's talk about blue to start with. The cheapest is probably $2 to $3 a kilogram. If you want to go to green, which means you're powering it off of renewable energy and you're cracking the water molecule, which you all know, polar molecule, tough to crack, takes a lot of energy to crack it. Okay, that's about double. That's on the order of $5 to $6 a kilogram. The market today is 50 cents a kilogram. So there's the gap. Okay, now you'd say technology, and that's where the R&D, and this is what it applies. If you can get natural hydrogen out of the ground and you can develop it for 50 cents, you know, a kilogram, then yes, it'll take off, because the market, the Japanese, the Koreans, Europeans, the people that want to, and in the US, that think we can move to a hydrogen economy quicker, that's the gap. And so I'd say, yeah, I think natural hydrogen will be a part of the solution. It'll bootstrap its way, but it's going to take a long time. And so you ask, will it disrupt the whole energy? No, it's not going to disrupt the whole energy system, because the density, the economics, the energy required to crack even the methane or the water molecule is so great that it adds cost. So until you can get the whole system cheaper, you know, it's just not going to, it'll grow, it'll come up, but before it takes a step function change, it's going to require more technology, lower cost, better learning curves, you know, all the above.
I think this will be the last question. So, and I think it's a good one to close on. How do you see your business strategy evolving in the next 20 to 30 years?
Yeah.
I know you're CEO of the company, so
I'm gonna give that to
you
my
might
kids,
think about
so
this.
I don't know. Yeah, well, it's a great question. I mean, we run a lot of scenarios inside our company. Change, like I said before, change is always here. Our business is going to be volatile, but you know, Look, there is, even in the 1.5 degree IPCC case, in the coming out of COP and all the climate scenarios, says by 2050, if you believe net zero is achievable by 2050, and you can withhold the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees, the fossil fuel business is still about 60 million barrels a day. And that's today's business is roughly 100, 105, 110 million barrels. So it's about half. So that's the answer is, look, if you can have the lowest cost supply resources, you can be the lowest emissions intensity resources. I don't care what scenario you talk about, that's going to win all day long. And we've got that opportunity here with the Permian, with what we're doing. We keep the emissions, it's some of the lowest intensity barrels that produce in the world today. So to give you just the world on average is about the equivalent of 40 to 50 kilograms per barrel of emissions. The unconventionals in the US are 10 or less. So that gives you a sense of kind of, we're really there in terms of the emissions intensity. Nothing is zero. So that's why net zero by 2050 is probably an impossible thing. I mean, I don't know how you abate all these emissions to go get there. So it's a long way of saying, look, even in what people would say is the absolute hardest cases to get to, our business is still here. It's at half the size of what it is today, so you have to figure out how do you win and how do you be one of those winners in that scenario, which I think our company is set up to go do, but that's not our base case. So I would tell you, 20, 30 years, we're around here doing the same thing, trying to figure out how to do it safer, faster, and cheaper.
What I think about when you ask that question also is that those leaders in 20 or 30 years are waking up right now here in San Jacinto dormitory, going out to their classes to learn and to hear moments like this. So having you here to get that word out to those leaders who now are going to take care of us and our energy needs in the future is a great tribute to how we get to operate a university. I'm so grateful that you've come to our university to share your wisdom.
Yeah,
thank you for being here, and thank you for the great questions.
Yeah, thank you.